Welcome back, everybody. Let's have a look at Bitcoin, and we're only going to look at Bitcoin now because I think that Bitcoin is basically going to dominate the direction of everything. And there are a few other little bits and bobs here and there that I'm playing around with, but that's not really the important thing. The important thing is Bitcoin, alright? So when everybody out there generally on Twitter, and I don't follow many people, but generally everybody seems to be pretty bullish about this, and really what I've got to say is, I like to keep everything as simple as possible. All right, you can look at a million different indicators, and I suppose you can come up with a million different outcomes, but some of the best things you can do is just to stand back and just have a little look. All right, so if we were to look at this chart from this perspective, all right, so just looking at that right now, what does that really look like to you? Does that look constructive? Does it look like it's redistributing? Does it look healthy? This goes back to 2017. It looks like a giant consolidation, and what we've got here is we've got this trend line here to show us that there is a consolidation line, a trend line that we've got here that basically is acting as a resistance, right? And I talk about this on all my videos now for quite a while now, and really until we break above this trend line, there's not really anything bullish about Bitcoin. Alright, so one thing you could say is we could all get excited saying we're getting very close to it, it's only going to be a month away before it's at the price action that we're at right now. That's right, if our price action is where we are right now. Now Bitcoin has let's just sort of like just put that to one side. Alright, so just like I say, just bear that in mind. What you're looking at here doesn't look bullish, does it? It's not like looking at a Microsoft chart, which is basically the inverse of something like this, just constantly going up all the time. This, to be honest with you, looks like it's just technically going down. Alright, so obviously things change, right? But and another thing to bear in mind before we move this aside is that at the moment the world is going through some tough economic times, alright, and that's the entire world, alright, and that's not over yet. And in fact, I'd probably say a lot of that pain is yet to be felt. The crash that we had as a result of the outbreak was a speculative crash, alright. So that was all kinds of analysts and traders and everybody coming to the conclusion that there's going to be some economic trouble, alright? And everything got sold in advance of lockdowns and this, that and the other. Things hadn't really happened at that point. That was speculative, alright? And as a result, it moved back up. So we're talking about Bitcoin, we're talking about other financial markets, just generally speaking, the FTSE, the Nasdaq, the DAX, everything like that. So because that was speculative, it found itself a nice bounce. It bounced from that, and there's more than just a reason for it to bounce. First of all, nothing technically had changed at this level. This is just, like I say, speculative. We're anticipating some pain, but the pain hadn't begun. So it's only fair for someone to bounce like that, because the day after that, nothing had changed. There was no lockdowns, there was none of this. Everything was the same. And on top of that, to prop up the financial markets, we had all kinds of financial assistance from governments, printing money, blah 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 blah, holding up the stock markets worldwide. All countries doing the same thing, because they don't want it to continue to go down, because that speculative crash can cause economic crash. Just in itself, it's the power of the thought of it can then go on to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let's prop that stuff up, let's carry on. Now what I think is going to start happening as as people sort of begin to step back and see that actually, yes, now we are going through some economic trouble. People are losing their jobs. There is a lot of stuff going off in the world. We're going to start to have economic reality kick in. Right? And economic reality is unlikely to be a sharp drop like this unless, of course, something else happens to cause another speculative crash, or financial figures come out that are so dire that we just anticipate that this will happen, and then the self-fulfilling prophecy does kick in, and then we do have another crash like this. But generally, what is likely to happen as financial figures come out and they look worse and worse and worse, the financial markets will start to tail off. You look at something like Nasdaq, doesn't look like this, FTSE doesn't look like this. They generally just continue to go up. They're relatively healthy. But Bitcoin doesn't look like that. In fact, Bitcoin has just been going down, technically down on a long trend line now for over 2 years. So I'm not saying Bitcoin can't break out of this, and like I say, we are very close to that, but we were close to it here, weren't we? We were close to it here as well, and neither of those times did we actually break out of it. And I honestly think that economic reality is what I'm referring to it as, is going to start to kick in soon, and financial markets will start to tail off, and maybe crash, but certainly tail off. Anyway, let's have a look at Bitcoin, and we'll work out what I think is likely to happen on this here. So we've got to look at, this is a daily chart, and the daily chart to me, first of all, we had an upwards trending level of support which is broken now, and it would appear that that's actually become resistance. So we broke down from it, which was a relatively strong area. This is our last attempt to break above this descending trend line that we had, the important one, the one that would to me signify the bull run, or the start of an epic bull run that would continue for at least another maybe 18 months. But it didn't. It rejected just like it had done previously. So yes, we're very close to it, and we could push up to test it again, but I'd be kind of surprised if we did. But if we did, I would still expect a rejection, given the health of everything and the nature of this chart, by the way. It doesn't look like it's ready, and it certainly wouldn't be the time for it to do that, because in order for us to have a mega bull run, we need money, and money at the moment, it appears that it's not circulating the way it used to. There's a lot less of it around, or those who do have it are trying to hold on to it because they don't know when they're going to need it. And the last thing they want to do is to put it into an asset that looks technically a little bit like this, which is it's not certain. It's just definitely not certain. Not until we break this trend line, we start going up and making higher highs and higher highs. Because by the way, this is the end of the last bull run. If you go back in time with Bitcoin, it's not technically a bull run really until we take out our last highest high. That's like 100% gain away from where we are right now. So it's a way away, a long way away. But we can get in early if we break out of this trend line. So yeah, technically that would be the first indicator that might happen. It doesn't mean that it is happening, but it's the first strong signal for me to say that it's going to happen. Or it might be at the beginning of it. We're not at the beginning of it right now. Technically, we're still technically bearish in this respect. In a long-term time frame, we're still technically bearish, unfortunately. So what am I looking at here? Well, unfortunately, because we're getting rejected here, we broke above it. Technically, we broke above it, but we closed beneath it. That's no big surprise. And what we're doing here, we've been rejected from it today. Now, it is upwards trending, and actually, it comes to a head at this level here. That will be on the 2nd of July. That's when the upwards trending resistance meets the downwards trending resistance. And at that point, then the resistance gets lower and lower and lower. Technically easier to break in a way because the price is lower, but I don't think our price is going to be anywhere near this trend line at that point. I think we're looking to break down from here, to be honest, and yes, we might find our pumps, and we might come up to pump to 10,000, we might even pump to 10,200 or so, testing this descending trend line, but I don't think we've got the power for it, and if we do, I think it will signify the ultimate short, maybe not the ultimate, but a pretty epic short. Alright, so I was short on this market the other day. I closed them. Almost all of my shorts have been closed now, because I was getting a little bit worried. So I actually I got hit on a couple of them and took profit on some of them, but that's neither here nor there. I've got my equity all saved up, ready to go to pull the trigger for what I think is going to be an epic shot. And I'm not a financial advisor, so this isn't financial advice. And there may be maybe a couple of weeks, or maybe even a week or so, where Bitcoin continues to go sideways or trickles, but between essentially this Bollinger Band here. So it's a nice range from what 9,200 to about maybe 10,000, 9,900 or so. So we can play that range, and that range that's fine. But maybe a little bit more sideways, but I think it's down from here. And technically we could probably draw a trend line now already from these candle bodies. We can just about. It's a little messy. Can we tighten that up a little bit? Should we go for wicks or candle bodies? It's not really working out very well. I think we'll leave that for the moment, but I mean that's a real mess, to be honest with you. But you can see where I'm coming from, right? We're making lower highs basically. There may not be a trend line or an exact trend line, but we're making lower highs recently, and I believe we're going to continue to make lower highs now until the next big crash, dump, pullback, whatever you want to call it, until that happens. Now, I'm not mega bearish on this. I think the target for me would be around 7,700, depending on the nature of the rest of the financial situation of the rest of the world. 7,700 would be what I would expect to see from this chart as we see it right now. I'm not talking massive crashes or anything like that, but that's a significant pullback from the price that we are right now. So if that happened today, that would be a 20%. So that's nothing massive. I mean, it's big, but it's nothing huge, is it, when you think about what Bitcoin is capable of, and especially where we all expect it to be going. So down to 7,700 to me doesn't sound out the realms of possibility, and that's, like I say, only 20%. I mean, you see alts pump 20% on a daily basis all the time, and you see them crash 20% all the time. I mean, that's alts, it's not Bitcoin, but technically it's the same kind of deal. We like Bitcoin because it's volatile. It's not as volatile as other altcoins, for instance, but it has proven itself to be extremely volatile, and that's why people like it, right? And being volatile doesn't mean it's just going to go up all the time. Volatile means it's going to go down as well, as this chart suggests. The main volatility in this chart has definitely, for the longest period of time now, been to the down. Okay, so yes, we had big pumps here, but technically, you could have shorted here, 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 you could be shorting here, and maybe you could technically be shorting here. The volatility favors the downtrend, in my opinion. Obviously there's risk involved, there's always risk, but when you've got a chart that looks like this, it doesn't, to me, look like it's confirmed any kind of tangible bottom. When we have things like this, basically, and I know that this is, you can take this with a pinch of salt, but technically, I mean, it did come down to this level, and this level is the level where basically most people decided that Bitcoin had bottomed in the first place. So you could call that a double bottom, but what's to say that we can't come down to there again? I'm not saying that we will, but I'm more inclined to think that this is where we're likely to come down to, and if that breaks, then it would be around 6,600, which technically should have been the bottom of this area here. 6,600, boink boink, that would have been a double bottom. This would have probably bounced around 7,700 if it wasn't for the worldwide incident that happened. But it did happen, and it brought us down to here. So, like I say, these targets are realistic targets. They're not mad, and you might think I'm mad, and I wouldn't blame you. But I think the downtrend has begun. I said this over a week ago. I think the downtrend has begun, and these little tiny blips here are nothing in comparison to what we're likely to see sooner rather than later. I mean, it could happen any minute now, to be honest with you. Any minute now it could happen, but given the vibe that's on Twitter and things like that, just from what I can see, I think it's got maybe another week or so left in it before we start to see real significant moves to the down. And obviously, I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, then that's great, because it was, to me, being wrong for me would be breaking out of this trend line, this upwards, breaking out of this descending trend line upwards. And like I say, that would signify to me that we are perhaps at the beginning now of an actual bull run that would last about 18 months. So buying in at any level around here is going to have decent gains, in I would expect, and lower risk. Buying in here would probably, technically be one of the worst places to buy, because we've not broken the downwards trend line, and every time we've touched that trend line, it's been pretty terrible. In fact, it's been really nasty. Imagine buying it here, and then in a few months we could look back at this chart and go, God, could you imagine buying it here? So I don't have a crystal ball, obviously, but I try to keep it as simple as possible. And you can, like I say, you can go mad on technical analysis if you want to, and you will make yourself mad. But sometimes some of the most simple things to do is to look at it basically, and this is the most basic thing I can explain to you, and I hope that it makes sense. Like I say, bear in mind what's going on in the rest of the world at the moment. The world is not looking great. Financial situation in the world is not looking great. So Bitcoin has proven itself to be tied into all of that, completely tied into all of that. So bear all that in mind when looking to trade this. Like I say, I'm still bearish on this one, and I'm bearish to at least 7,700 and maybe even 6,600. Breaking down below there is, to me, unlikely unless the rest of the world decides it wants to plummet. But it could happen, and it could happen. There's nothing to say that it wouldn't happen. But these are my targets: there, and possibly 5,000 flat. But anyway, I'll keep you all updated. Feel free to slag me off in the comments. And join my Telegram if you want to chat with me directly. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a nice evening. Take it easy.